Welcome to the Leadership Art Podcast. I'm your host, Art Robbins, and it's great to have you join us. The Leadership Art Podcast features insightful conversations with industry leaders who lead with purpose, and we want to inspire you to be the best leader you can be. Today, my guest is Don DiCostanzo, the serial, with an S, entrepreneur who literally puts cycling on the fast track. Don is the innovator and founder of Pedego Electric Bikes, creating a trend that revolutionized the cycling industry, putting electric bikes into the mainstream. After Pedego, Don founded Experience Ventures, investing in new companies focused on emerging technologies and lifestyle brands. And his latest initiative is the Ticket 500, a curated community of entrepreneurs, investors, and mentors designed to help people turn their ideas into real, growing, sustainable businesses. Don, welcome to the Leadership Art Podcast.
Thank you, Art. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. And, we want to talk about entrepreneurship, and I can't think of a better person to have a conversation about that with. You've epitomized entrepreneurship your entire life.
I appreciate that. It started out at a very young age. I started selling seeds door to door, and I found out what no meant. No meant I don't have a garden. No meant I don't care for flowers or vegetables. And not discouraged, I switched quickly to selling light bulbs because everybody needed light bulbs.
Okay.
Two very important lessons. The seeds cost me 15 cents a package, and I sold them for 25 cents, made 10 cents, and I didn't sell very many. Light bulbs, however, they cost me $1 a package, and I sold them for $2. And I learned at 9 years old that I wanted to sell something with high tickets and high margin.
Wow.
So my entire career, I've always focused on having at least doubling the money from the cost of, or have a 50% gross margin.
So you started at 9. Now, what inspired you to start at such an early age?
I don't think it was the money. I thought the money was the measurement. I thought my success, my innate self-worth became measured by the money I made. And it wasn't like I spent the money, I saved it. And I think having that money always there, I always kind of admired the fact that I had the money and I could make it. It just inspired me to do other things, from mowing lawns to babysitting to installing insulation in a neighbor's attic. And the thing that really almost got me in trouble, I installed telephone systems in people's houses when it was against the law to do that. Back in the day, the AT&T, or Ma Bell as they were known, you had to pay $1 a month to have an extension phone. But
that was the monopoly days.
It was the monopoly days. And I found, and that carried me through my life. I learned that you have to be a little bit ahead of where the market's going. And I sensed the market would go to the point people would be able to own their own phones. And so I learned how to install one in my own room. And then neighbors started asking me, and I was buying old cradle phones on the back of the New York Times, an ad for $9.95 with $1.50 in shipping and handling, and I would sell them for $25 installed. So I would cover all my costs and make money. I need wire and time and labor, but the whole neighborhood was wired with illegal electric phones done by me.
This raises a topic that's come up in many of our prior episodes. I actually once asked a guest, when did you decide to become an entrepreneur? And the guest said, Art, you're asking the wrong question. And I said, what do you mean? People usually don't tell me I ask the wrong questions. And he says, you don't decide to be an entrepreneur. He said, it's self-evident. Yeah, I wonder how you feel about that, having started at such an early age.
First of all, the word entrepreneur wasn't even in my vocabulary.
Okay.
So maybe 20 years ago. I don't think anybody's vocabulary. When I went to school, there was no class for entrepreneurship. And I don't think I even learned how to spell entrepreneur until 20 or 25 years ago. But I do agree with that. I think it goes hand in hand with salesmanship, because you can't sell your idea, your concept. It doesn't matter. But the point of the story about installing telephones, I saw a trend that was happening. And my definition of as an entrepreneur is very simple. It's somebody who sees an opportunity and gets there before anybody else does. And I've done that throughout my life. Electric bikes are just a good example of that. I saw that things were evolving electric, and I really believe electric bikes would become mainstream back in 2006 and 2007. And I started Pedego in 2008, but I saw that that movement coming. And my industry experience came from in the automotive space, mostly chemicals. And chemicals evolved into washing cars because you needed chemicals to wash cars. So I became a student of that, and then I ultimately had 40 car washes that I built starting in 2001, and in 2008 I sold that company and started in the electric bike space because I saw the growth in that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Pedego experience for a minute, because that really was a sea change in your entrepreneurial journey. That created a whole trend, a whole industry that didn't exist. You had the idea, you weren't involved in the industry when you started. How do you get a business like that off the ground to be successful? And for the entrepreneurs that are listening in the audience.
So it was inspired first by me liking the product. I bought an electric bike and I thought, this is something good. I can now get back into cycling. Because like most people in my generation, we rode bikes when we were kids. That's what we did. That's how we got around the neighborhood. We had Stingrays and we rode around and we had fun time. But you become of age and you get a driver's license and you meet girls. And the next thing you know, bikes are not of any interest any longer. And then life goes on. You go to school, you go out and get a career, you have kids. And then the next thing you know, the kids are gone, all that stuff is done. So now what do? You think about getting back into cycling, but you're not in the same shape. So an electric bike gave a little bit of that assist. And I sensed other people like that. So that created the idea. And then I opened up a store to sell electric bikes. And I learned then what the customers wanted. So for a year, I had what I would call a R&D laboratory to see what customers wanted. And I carried all things electric scooters, electric skateboards. We even had electric golf carts, Cadillac Escalade.
These were third-party products.
These were all third-party. Everything was a third-party product. I brought in 4 or 5 different brands of electric bikes. I brought in electric skateboards. And during that time, I learned what the customer wanted. And I figured out real quick that the customers wanted, they were generally aging baby boomers. They would buy them in pairs. They were looking for something stylish and something that was reliable and something they go out and ride like a regular bike and pedal. But when they needed that extra boost to get up a hill or to lengthen their riding experience, they could flip the switch of a motor and it could propel them. At that time, anybody selling electric bikes in the U.S. were shunned by the bicycle industry. The traditional bike industry hated electric bikes. And when after this 1-year experiment, I sold the store and I decided to start Pedego. And I went around thinking I was going to sell them through bike shops. And the bike shops shunned me like nobody I could expect. It was like, no.
They really saw you as a threat back then.
No, I don't think it was a threat. I think it was a concern that they had that was cheating. And they would call it that. They were saying somehow that's not riding a bike if you add any kind of electric propulsion to it. That was a general.
So it was more an ideological objection.
100%.
That's interesting.
In fact, the company who I was converting their bikes, I took a very successful brand of regular bikes and I was converting those to electric in the early days. They banned me from doing that. They stopped me from doing it. And that became the telltale sign that these guys are asleep at the switch here. There's a tremendous opportunity here that they didn't see or understand, or probably more importantly, didn't want to understand. They believed that everybody who rode a bike needed a pedal. And I fought that, believe it or not, for at least 10 years. That was prevalent up until 2015, 2016, 2017, when they started to see my success and decided, well, maybe there is something to electric bikes. I would go to the cycling conferences. I was persona non grata. People wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't sit at the same table with me. It was a lonely experience in the
Well, you had a lot of courage to persevere. But the takeaway I really like from this is before you even manufactured your own brand, it's like you had the ultimate customer research by having that store for a year and just showing the customers a variety of products, getting their feedback. That's the best kind of research you can do. Better than something you would do in an R&D lab or a polling group. You had firsthand research that was invaluable.
Absolutely, and I'm doing it again now in the water business.
Okay.
I see a real challenge in drinking water. We're drinking a lot of microplastics. It's causing multiple health issues by everybody's account. We're drinking water out of plastic water bottles. After I've learned what I've learned about plastic water bottles and microplastics in our system, my mouth will never put lips on a plastic water bottle again. And I encourage everybody. But in the meantime, I bought probably 25 different pieces of equipment that are looking to solve that problem, whether it's reverse osmosis systems or making water from the air, which I've got several pieces of equipment to do that. I'm doing the exact same thing in the water space. But what's fascinating to me, you go to Home Depot or Best Buy or any electronic thing, they don't sell anything for water, which is just amazing to me. And I saw the same thing in the electric bike space. nobody was selling anything in bike stores that resembled an electric bike. And the few competitors I had went out of business after I got into business because they wouldn't stick with it. But you have to, as an entrepreneur, you have to believe in what you're doing as a cause. In the electric bikes, I love riding electric bikes. I still to this day. And I love drinking water, and I realize how important water is to our health. And there's no real solution out there right now. There's some solutions to not drinking out of plastic water, don't get me wrong, but there aren't any really good solutions. So that's why we have the same thing set up now. And interesting enough, about 3 blocks from where I started electric bike business, and in the same type of building, a 100-year-old wood building. So I'm using the same kind of concept to do this consumer research.
Okay, so that's one of the keys to success is get a 100-year-old wood building, and that'll increase your chances, right?
Well, I think the uniqueness of it is that it wasn't something I could do in an office environment. I don't have a retail environment. So in the case of the bikes, I opened up a retail store and made money. And I needed to make money to have it justify. And the business itself for the year was actually profitable. In this scenario, it's not profitable, but I realized how important it is to do research in that way.
But maybe say something about the importance of culture in building a business, that if you create the right environment and the right culture, it would spawn innovation, it would encourage the type of behavior you need to be successful.
So in this world of technology and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, we're starting to lose some of that personal connection. And I believe relationships are the best currency out there. And you can't lose that, especially when you're dealing with consumers and what consumers want and what they don't like. So having that interface with the consumer is far more important than developing some widget that you think they might want. We need to understand what widgets they want. And I've learned a tremendous amount just in 3 months in this product development phase I'm going in. And the exact same thing happened in the electric bike space. In fact, the one company that dissed me and told me I couldn't convert their bikes ended up regretting that, because 3 years after they did that to me, they found Miley Cyrus riding one of my bikes in People magazine.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of things about Pedego I'd like to explore, maybe tying them to the broader lessons that entrepreneurs should learn about building a successful business. We talked a lot about the early stages, but what are some of the unique challenges and lessons to scale? Because Pedego is a force in the industry. It's the leading brand in the industry right now. And you don't see a lot of entrepreneurial companies making that transition. And it's one thing to found something and create a great product. It's another thing to get industry acceptance and sustainability.
There are a lot of factors that go into building any company or business model. And in the particular case of everything I've been involved with, I think of everything in 4 boxes: price, product, promotion, and placement. And those
4
are
Ps.
The famous Ps, 4 Ps of marketing. I've taught classes on that. And I continue to maintain that it's the secret to success, because if you miss any of the 4 Ps, you lose. You could do 3 exceedingly well, be the best at 3 of the 4 Ps, but if you fail in any one of those Ps, you fail. The most challenging thing in the electric bike space was placement. How do people get them? And I had a huge pushback from the traditional bike industry, who was anti-electric bike, and even the few electric bike stores that I could get to carry them, they shunned them. And even if they saw some success, they still didn't like them, and they had no loyalty. So it forced me to open my own stores. And it wasn't because I wanted to open stores, but we ended up opening up over 200 locations all across the country. We in Canada, we even had a handful in Europe. That solved that placement problem that I had. How's the customer going to buy it and experience it? And over the time frame that I started 2008 and today, almost every electric bike company has failed and filed for bankruptcy. And there was a YouTube video that came out just a couple of months ago that said all electric bikes fail. They didn't take Pedego as an exception because maybe they didn't know about it, or they didn't want to count the exception because of one reason. And the one reason is they failed to go through distribution and set up stores where people could come and buy and test them and ultimately get them repaired when they broke. And all the reboots of these companies are now going through that distribution system and developing their own stores. So in essence, they validated what I did is the right way to do it. And I did it because I believed it was the right way to do it. Now, the other big lesson was there was a lot of money put in the electric bike business. One of our competitors raised $329 million in investment capital, and they had a market cap of $1.5 billion at that point. They filed bankruptcy, and they became sold for $13 million. So even though they had paid $329 million of paid-in capital, they went bankrupt. And why did they go bankrupt? Because they forgot the fundamentals, okay? Pedego, we only had $2.5 million in paid-in capital, and we sold for a 9-figure number. And it was because we were profitable. We recognized that you can't just have all this artificial money come in, and growth at all costs became the whole philosophy of the entire electric bike business, except for Pedego. We never had growth at all costs. We wanted to be profitable. We grow at a slow and steady rate. And the only criticism we might have is, yeah, we didn't grow to be this big, giant gorilla, but we established a brand name. We still have the best reputation. We still have retail locations all over the country that are successful. And we built it based on a model that you got to make money on every bike you sell.
You know, we recently had a discussion about the pressures companies are facing to grow, and a lot of it comes from investors and even having the wrong investors, that the investors don't really understand the business, but they're just focused on the numbers and their exit strategy. So they're pushing grow faster, grow at all costs. Was that something you had to deal with, or how do you resist those kind of pressures there when forces are saying grow more, grow faster?
I ignored the forces. I was growing at a rate that I felt was comfortable. We were growing at about 30% per year. And to me,
which is still very impressive.
But it was a safe rate. We did it without raising outside capital. We were able to get, because we were a well-run company, we were able to get bank debt, which is the best form of capital.
So you were pretty much self-funded.
I gave away very little equity, and early on, as a lot of people tend to do. I can't tell you how entrepreneurs that I run into. I'm invested in about 20 different businesses today, and I can't believe how many times the entrepreneurs just think money at all costs, and that's a huge mistake. And many have lived to regret that because they got money at all costs. And that one other company I referenced that had $329 million in paid-in capital, that founder, entrepreneur, had at one point on paper was worth $500 million because the company was valued at $1.5 billion, and he owned 30% of the company. He got nothing, zero. He got absolutely nothing. The company went bankrupt. He went from working worth $500 billion on paper to being worthless, having basically nothing as a result of getting the wrong investors and getting too much money.
And it only takes one wrong investor to sink the whole ship.
That is a true statement. My advice to all entrepreneurs is to make sure you always have more than 50% ownership, in which case there's other ways around that. Even the founders of Elon Musk doesn't have that equity, and neither does the founders of Google, but they control it. So they vote the controlling shares. So it doesn't matter how much you actually own, it matters how much you control. But if you don't ever want to lose track of your company, or ownership of your company, running your company, don't ever let anybody have more than the voting shares than you have.
No, it's a great lesson. Another thing I wanted to explore, which I think will also lead to some further conversations, is electric bikes were brand new. They didn't exist before, and if you look at laws, regulations, that did not catch up to the innovation that the industry presented to society. And we see that with all technologies. We see it with technologies in the past and technologies in the future, that innovation always precedes the guidelines or the guardrails needed to use it responsibly. And maybe this isn't so much specific to electric bikes, but as a general question, what responsibility does a founder and an innovator have to set the tone, to apply those standards or guardrails, to enforce responsible use of their technology or their product, even if there's nothing in place to rein in the use of that technology?
So let me just tell you one thing very important to this conversation, is that the electric bike was invented in 1897, so it's not a new
okay.
The patent was actually granted in 1897. So
I didn't realize that.
People have blamed me or said that I started the electric bike business. That nothing could be further from the truth. I like to think I perfected it, but I certainly didn't start it, because as old as I might be, I wasn't. And Lee Iacocca made a big splash in trying to develop an electric bike business in 1997, and he formed a company called EV Global Motors. And I happened to get a glimpse of that because a good friend of mine was the CEO for that company. And I watched him fail after 6 years and $50 to $100 million of paid-in capital. I'm not sure the exact money, but it's somewhere between that number. It was a substantial amount of money. And before I started Pedego, I made sure I understood why did they fail. And any one of these things would have caused them to fail. But the first things is they were ahead of their time. The market wasn't quite ready for electric bikes, and that alone would cause you to fail because timing is.
Sure.
The second thing that caused them to fail is the product was ugly. Okay. The third thing that caused them to fail, it was of poor quality. The fourth thing that caused them to fail, it was very heavy and very difficult to maneuver because they were using lead acid batteries. And the fifth thing that caused them to fail was that they were trying to sell them through franchise car dealerships, because that was Lee Iacocca's background. Now, Lee was the father of the Mustang. He took a Ford Falcon and turned it into a stylish Mustang, and probably the biggest hit vehicle forever, for all time's sake. And he took the Chrysler when they were failing and created the K car and the minivan. People
Right.
So
That's
the guy
right.
was a real innovator. For his third act, he was looking to get in the electric bike business, but ultimately the business failed.
But what you described, he didn't check off the 4 Ps.
He did not check what he did yet. He had too much money, so he had all these experts on board, knew everything about everything, but really knew nothing about this particular category. And any one of those things would have killed him, but all those things collectively. And so it's important to know those things. But he did do something very well, is he got a law enacted in 2002 that classified an electric bike in a generic term in the halls of Congress. Okay, so that became the foundation. So he spent the time and the money to lay that foundation. However, fast forward into the timeline I was there was a big question mark where you could ride them. What is really an electric bike and where you can ride it. So we had to get involved in legislation. And as California goes, so goes the rest of the country, particularly when it comes to bikes. So we did everything we can to try to enact legislation to define it. An electric bike is really a bicycle, as long as it doesn't go any faster than 20 miles per hour. It is classified by federal law as a bicycle. So we went to California, to the legislature, and used Matt Harper, who's a local congressperson here, to help us get that achieved. And we were very successful until we weren't. And when I say we weren't, our bill got hijacked in the 11th hour. We went and made it through Senate, we made it through Congress. When it went to go vote on the floor, it got gutted and amended, which means they took everything we had written and gotten approved and changed it entirely to become a high-speed moped law, which had nothing to do with what we did. So it was a hard lesson. So then we got involved. I got involved in the association, and the bike people were starting to recognize that we need to get these regulated. There were a lot of things that we debated, whether or not people should wear helmets or not, how fast should they go, what age should you be when you ride them. There were things that were very important to me. One was the minimum age of 16. Unfortunately, the cycling community voted me out on that one. But I needed their help to get the legislation. So we did get legislation across the finish line as far as allowing us to ride electric bikes on bike paths where they're safe. What I didn't get was a top speed of 20 miles per hour. They managed to wiggle in 28 miles per hour, which in my opinion is too fast for an electric bike. But that became the law of the land. And after that, virtually every state rolled out the California law that we passed. So first lesson is you got to start state at a time, and then it rolls out over time to get legislated approval of what. But we had industry support to get that done. Now, 10 years later, we're now fighting some of those same battles that we should have answered 10 years ago as far as the age group. I don't believe a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, or certainly not a 10-year-old boy should be riding an electric bike on public roadways. It just doesn't make any sense to me, because they don't have the capacity, the mental capacity to understand the risks involved with that. And I just ask anybody that was 13 years old, think back when you were 13, do you think you would have been safe riding an electric bike? The answer for any guy would, of course not. We would have killed ourselves. So now we're having to go back and fix that.
Yeah. What I'm hearing here is you had a standard in your mind as you manufactured the product of this is a responsible way to use it. And early on, you got heavily involved with the government and the policy-making authorities to try to influence that, to adopt a responsible standard.
Yeah, and I used the industry association to do that. Even though they shunned me, didn't necessarily like what I was doing, they realized that regulation was necessary. And some leaders in the industry decided that I might have been right, and they got behind what we were doing and then helped shape the legislation. So you can't do it on your own. I tried to do it on my own and I failed.
Yeah.
And I went put my tail between my legs. I then realized I needed the assistance of an industry-wide, so got involved in the associations and got involved in having to fight along the way for people who wanted to make changes for it along the way. Some big suppliers wanted to change the rules to their benefit, and I had to fight those as well. So get involved in the industry, even if they don't want you or like you, get involved.
I think what's fascinating about this conversation is this really is a recurring theme for entrepreneurs and innovation. You could pick any technology and substitute electric bikes for this new technology, and you'd have the same issues. How do you use it responsibly? And I think we're seeing it these days with AI. I know we want to talk about AI because that's driving a lot of entrepreneurship right now. And a lot of people are afraid of AI. They're afraid of the potential of what it could do. They're afraid of the things it's already done. And it's like the Wild West right now. And a lot of people are promoting you can't regulate it, you can't put reins on it. But how would you apply some of these principles for entrepreneurship in AI today?
That's a multifaceted question and has a lot of different answers, but my focus on using AI is it's the single best tool an entrepreneur's ever had in their lifetime. It's a great partner. It's a great way to vet ideas, to create ideas. It's just the most amazing tool you could ask for, but it's not going to do the work for you. So a lot of people think, well, AI, I can just say AI, I don't want to have to work anymore. I only work an hour a week or something like that. That's not what this is about. It's like when the internet came out. Yeah, you can sell things on the internet, but there's a lot of work to sell things on the internet. Just having a product and putting it on the internet isn't the answer. That's just part of the 4 Ps. That's the distribution model. That's where you're going to sell and place it, and that's where you're going to promote it. You still got to have price, and you've got to make sure that you've got the right product. So AI, I look at it as what are the practical applications. If I'm an entrepreneur, for example, we got selected to go on Shark Tank, okay, and they wanted us to make a video. So I asked AI to provide me the cue cards I needed, and it already knew enough about the product that we were trying to present. It created cue cards for me. I was on to create cue cards. It created 17 cue cards for me that I printed out. It would have taken me a week to figure out how to do it, and because it already knew what the product was and what it did, it already knew all the content. Saved me literally a week.
It was like an assistant for you. It truly was an assistant.
In the world. And I basically cut, copied, and pasted those and printed those out and pasted them on poster board. And I used those exact cue cards to do what I was able to put together a video in a 1-hour filming session for a 10-minute video. It would have taken me hours to do any other way to do it. And everything in AI is what's the application? What do you want to use AI for? Do you want to write a letter? Do you want to write an email? Do you want to create a marketing post? Do you want to, it just depends on what you do. The best practical application I found for AI today is in accounting. It's just something simple that I use credit cards called Ramp, and I have a credit card for each business I'm involved in, and it automatically, when I charge the card, it automatically sends me a text and said, send me a copy of the receipt. I take a picture of the receipt, boom, it classifies it, figures out where I was, what I bought, what was on the receipt, and automatically puts it into our accounting software, which in this case was QuickBooks. It's done. Nobody touched it. Receipt goes in the trash can. It's already entered the books. So that's a great application where some type of artificial intelligence is things that we already know and applying it to it.
What's interesting about that, because we've talked and you know the studies, over 90% of AI projects fail. They don't deliver the expected ROI. But like in that Ramp example, what they basically did is they looked at the current workflow and they totally changed it. And they said, how can we use AI to add a layer of value that doesn't exist today? And it wasn't just putting a bolt on top of some existing process or workflow. They totally revamped it.
And more importantly to that, and you think about it, they now have my credit card business. I don't think I get any points. I don't think I get any miles, but the convenience factors were so much I'm willing to put all that aside for the fact that's one less thing I have to do. So that's a perfect application of a vertical market that they focused, and I'm sure others will follow. And the other key thing is not only you have to get there before anybody else does, you got to get there fast and dominate as that's your space, because no matter what you come out with today, everyone's going to copy it. It's too easy to copy things. AI is allowing anybody to copy anything. We had at Ticket 500, we had a woman who was building up her own interior design business. And she said, I'm going to hire so-and-so to build a website for me. And I said, well, do you know what you want? She goes, oh, I know exactly what I want. There's a company in another town that has a website, on the East Coast, that has a website exactly like I want. So I said, let's just do that for you right now. So I sat down with her in a desk. In 10 minutes, we replicated that website. It looked like her website. It was her branding, her name, her everything. It replicated that exact website for everything they want to do. So did she steal it from the other company? No, because it's no different than taking pictures of it and telling your web designer, build one like this. Except in this case, Manus built that website in literally 10 minutes.
That's the opportunity and the problem, right? You could start a business fast, but then the next person could leapfrog you just as fast.
And improve on it.
And improve on it. So how do you create that sustainable advantage? What are you seeing some of the patterns are?
Art, I'll tell you one thing, it's very simple. It's hard work, okay? It's not a shortcut. It's a learning tool. It's a tool, not only a learning tool, it's a tool to help you get there faster and compete faster. And if you're not doing it, other people are going to do it. A year or so ago, I went to the crypto conference in Las Vegas, the Bitcoin conference, to learn about Bitcoin. And at the same time, there was a speaker there that talked about longevity. I'll think of his name in a minute, but he was talking about how we can live longer. And the fact is, if we live another 10 years, it's a good chance we could live to be 120 or 130, as long as we do this biohacking that AI is helping us with. And the third thing that I learned was AI. Those are the three things. So I went to ChatGPT, and I said, I'd like to write a book on 3 things that if you don't do, you're going to get left behind. Title of the book, Don't Get Left Behind. Write it by me as the author, and make it 3 chapters. 1, on AI, using AI. Number 2, longevity, try to figure out your life. And number 3, understand cryptocurrency, because it's the future of currency. So it wrote a book in about 10 or 15 minutes, 120 pages, 3 chapters, and it had all the points, the very salient points that I would, if I knew, I would have gotten across, but I didn't even know the points.
What did you think of it? What did you think of the work product?
It was the best written book I've ever written. And on top of that,
did it have your voice?
Yeah, I would say it did. Yeah, I would say it would have written in the style. If I were going to sit down and spend 3 or 4 weeks writing a book and doing research, I'd say yes, probably. But then it took me a couple steps further, which was shocking to me. And this was over a year ago. It said, do you want a cover for it? Sure, okay. Send me a picture for what you want on the cover. So I sent a picture, or inside jacket it wanted a book. And then when it was all done, it said, okay, here it is in a PDF. The next question said, do you want to publish it on Amazon? I'm like, whoa. I didn't, but I thought about it. So the next conversation I had was with my attorney. I said, who owns this book? Who said, it's unknown at this point.
Is that right?
It's unknown. Nobody knows because the laws don't know. But nobody's going to sue me for publishing a book like that because it was my own thought to create the book. And the fact that I used all these tools to get there to publish the book, I have a hard time thinking there's anything wrong with that book not being written by me. I didn't feel comfortable claiming that from an integrity standpoint that it was my book. Because the truth of the matter is anybody could go to AI and ask those same 3 questions.
The same prompts would have generated exactly the same book.
So the prompts,
yeah.
The secret to AI is understanding prompts. So this Ticket 500 forum that we're having is AI is winning hands down. People want to learn how to use AI. And some people are coming in and expecting it to do everything for them and make life easier. Some people come with the idea it's just a tool. And those are the people who are going to benefit from it. If you think it's just going to be, now it's a great tool if you want to figure out whether or not, this morning I wanted to see if my 8-month-old granddaughter could eat apples, because there's a question mark, she's teething, and AI gave me the answer. The answer is no, don't feed them an apple because they can choke on it. Okay, I didn't know that. That's a great use.
That's a great use, yeah.
From a business standpoint, it's a whole different set of questions, okay? What are you going to ask it to?
Well, it's like you talk about the book, you could generate the same book with the same prompts. I've spoken with professors who have gotten term papers and essays from different students that are almost verbatim. I've spoken with recruiters that have gotten cover letters for the same job description that are almost verbatim. And I've even heard a recruiter tell me that he's starting to get cover letters with typos in it that are intentionally put so the recruiter will know that a real person wrote the cover letter.
Now we're talking about hacks.
Yeah, and I'm sure you could prompt AI to say, add a couple of typos for me. The recruiter will think that I actually wrote it. So I guess this gets back to that responsibility question. It's like, where do you draw the guidelines? And I guess it's up to each individual now or each company to define that for themselves.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that. And I also think there's a lot of pitfalls that people need to be aware of. So, for example, we're trying to build Ticket 500 as an entrepreneur workshop, but we're using AI to do it. And I've got a lot of advisors and consultants to tell me what to do. And they all have these individual pieces, but there's a lack of connectivity to make it all work because everybody's learning it. And my advisor said, we've got the URL, we've got the website, now we have to get them live. We built the website here, now we got to connect them. So we needed a third product, which is the one that he picked. Well, it turns out it might not have been the best choice because it went down yesterday. We asked it to do emails, okay, to send out an email blast. And we said, we've got 5 upcoming sessions. Write an email promoting these 5 sessions. And send us a test email. So it sent us a test email. It wasn't right. We corrected it. Sent us another test mail. It corrected it. We said, we're good to go, send out the email. It sent out 5 individual emails for each class, like boom. So all the people on our mailing list got 5 individual emails. And on top of that, the graphic didn't show up. It was showed on all the test emails. So the point of the story is it's not always right. It fails. It messes up sometimes until it's perfected more than a human.
Yeah.
The answer was to go to MailChimp, do all the work over here, then go use a third-party provider that could, in fact, you could see it and you could generally do it because AI, the particular AI, did not do the job properly.
I also think, building on this, I think it's also important to have a good human-in-the-loop strategy, that there are certain things you shouldn't just blindly use AI for. You should make sure that there is a human intervention. If you're sending something important to a client, have a human check it before it goes to the client, regardless of what % of that was generated by AI.
100%. All that's true. And so even if it's just, you should proof it and don't rely on it. And then when it goes out, it's always been the responsibility of the sender to make sure the receiver gets the right message. That's communications 101.
Absolutely.
So even if you're using AI to communicate, and then people tell me they're not getting the emails. Why aren't you getting the email? Fortunately, you go back and check. In the case of MailChimp, you can go, wait a minute, Art, you did get that email. In fact, you opened it at 2:35 a.m. yesterday morning. And you can get that intelligence back. So all the artificial intelligence out there is just back to being a great tool for people to make your job more efficient. Not necessarily better, but certainly more efficient. Hopefully better, and hopefully make you more efficient, but it doesn't mean you don't have to work harder. I would make the case you have to actually work harder because there's a lot of people that are going to cheat and try to use AI to cheat and steal from you after you've done all the work.
Don, this has been a great conversation so far. We're getting close to our time limit, and we've covered a lot of ground. But again, thinking of the entrepreneurs out there that want to start an AI business, what would you say are some of the key takeaways that they should have when they think about scoping this business and scaling the business?
So there's 2 pieces of advice I would give. The first one is to master it, understand it, spend time and just because you learn it doesn't mean you understand it or that it's not going to change. The Ramp credit card, as we gave, is a great example of that. That's somebody that was in the credit card business, or maybe not, and they went up and set the credit card. So American Express is no longer my card of choice after being a member since 1980 on my credit card. I don't use my American Express. They lost me because somebody developed a better technology and do it. Well, they're going to get me back? Maybe, but not until they step up and be able to recreate that. So find that unique niche, understand it, and then go after it with a vengeance. If you want to start a business in AI, I think you're better off to start a business in something you're passionate about and use AI as the tool rather than think I'm going to go in, I'm going to jump in the AI business, because those are technologists to do.
You should lead with a problem that you're trying to solve, and then ask, how can AI as a tool help me solve that problem better than anyone else?
Yeah, it'd be like saying, I'm going to get in the internet business, okay, I'm going to get in it. What are you going to do? Compete with Google or AOL or whoever was out there at the time, or Yahoo?
It's a trap.
That's
it's a trap.
You're going to have a product that you can market through those as a tool. Yahoo and AOL and Google are all tools, but they're not the thing you can go start a career in. Yes, people are going to lose their jobs because of this, because it's going to be a radical shift. But people lost their jobs in the agricultural revolution. People lost their job in the industrial revolution. People lost their jobs in the technological revolution. This is bigger and bolder and faster than all that. It's going to happen at lightning speed. So if you're afraid about losing your job, you need to be concerned. You need to think about what you can do. And entrepreneurship's at an all-time high. The number of tax ID numbers filed in last month was the highest on record. So entrepreneurs are out there, but I don't want to scare anybody, but the 9 out of 10 times a company that starts today won't be in business 5 years from now. And even if they grow, doesn't mean they ever cross that chasm where they grow to be scaling. So have realistic expectations, find a niche, find something most important you're passionate about. Don't do it to chase the money. The money is only the measurement of your success. It is not the reason for it. And if it's in the money, you'll probably never be successful.
No, that's great advice. And I love your point about having a industry vertical focus, because I think that's the truth in the services business. I've been in the services business my entire career, and every practice I've been involved in that has focused on an industry, that has had that deep industry expertise, has done very well, regardless of what the use case was or the technology. It was the industry, the in-depth industry knowledge that really differentiated it. So I think that's totally applicable for AI. Great. Don, let me ask you this. I think you've probably gotten a lot of fans from this podcast episode, and people are going to want to follow you and hear more about the great things you're working on. Ticket 500 is certainly one of those here in Orange County. Tell us how people can best stay in touch with you.
I think the best tool business to business is LinkedIn. And so I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I like to post on LinkedIn and keep things active. Follow me on LinkedIn, Don DiCostanzo. Easy to find. I've been on a lot of podcasts in the past. I haven't lately. Podcasts weren't a thing. They're starting to become one now.
We like to think so.
Yeah, in fact, I have a lot of people said that they learned a lot about me from podcasts that I forgot that I was even on 5 or 6 years ago, because podcasts weren't a thing. But I think they're becoming more relevant today, particularly when we have to do a deep dive in something in AI. And I would follow lots of AI podcasts, and you can learn a lot from successful people. I'm a fan and a friend of Palmer Luckey. I listen to his podcast, and I learn more about Palmer there on his podcast than I do chatting with him one-on-one, because he might be the smartest person on the planet. Elon Musk is probably a close second, but you can learn from these guys. These are people that have a forward vision, and they see things we don't see. Elon Musk is probably the perfect example of a parallel entrepreneur. He's got how many businesses he truly integrated and been successful. SpaceX, the tunnel project with Tesla, and now, watch out, we didn't even talk about robots, but robots are coming. Every trade show I go to now, somebody has some basically crude version of a robot. But
I've seen that as well.
They keep getting better and better. And I saw one that they had a few women there that actually looked like real people. So we're going to, robotics in general is going to be the next big phase.
So is this a hint? Is robotics going to be the next venture that Don DiCostanzo gets involved with?
I already am in a big way in car washes. So car washes are one of the most automatic things. We've had automatic car washes since I was 16 years old, and I worked at Mr. Suds Car Wash in Rochester, New York. Car washes are an automatic way to wash cars, but they're going to get more automatic. They're going to be less thing. Instead of having somebody wave you in, that'll be a robot. In fact, we're developing that robot right now, so to eliminate the need for people at that. But they're not going to eliminate, it's going to minimize it.
Minimize. So you'll still have someone doing the final windshield wipe.
Not necessarily, somebody's got to load the chemicals in, make sure that the equipment's in, making sure that the equipment's functioning well, making sure the customers are getting the things they want, and then you need that guy at the very end to make sure the customer's satisfied. So the most important lesson I learned, though, in business I want to pass on is it's not important just to satisfy a customer. Right? It's paramount that you delight them. And I built Pedego on that premise, that we don't just satisfy the customers, we have to delight them. And delight is a whole other step, and the whole company culture has to be on delighting a customer. Not satisfying them, but make sure that they're truly delighted with your product or service.
That is a phenomenal lesson. That's a great final takeaway for anybody, regardless of what business they're in. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Don. That was great. Listen, we're about out of time here. So again, I want to thank Don for being our guest today. And again, to all of our listeners and followers, I want to thank you so much for joining us and for your continued support. So until the next episode of the Leadership Art Podcast, this is your host, Art Robbins. And remember, it's your lead.
Bye.